still figuring things out. But that is not what happened here. Eala did not grind this out. She did not hang on and survive. She walked into the match and took control of it. From the very first few games, you could feel it. The way the ball came off her racket. The way she positioned herself behind the baseline. The way she reset point after point like she had already seen this match play out in her head. And if you were really paying attention, something felt off. Not wrong, not lucky, just different. Because this did not look like a young player catching fire for one day. It looked like someone who already understood exactly what she was doing out there. And that is where the real question begins. Not how she won, but how she made it look so easy. Because just days earlier, Eala was coming off an early exit, still searching, still inconsistent, still hovering just outside that group of players who feel inevitable when they step on court. Then suddenly, Madrid. A big stage, a seasoned opponent. And the match feels one-sided. So what changed? Was it just a bad day for Pavlyuchenkova? Was it a matchup that happened to favor Eala? Or are we watching something deeper start to take shape? Because if this was not random, then this match is not just a result. It is the beginning of something. And to understand that, you have to go back to the part most people ignore. Before Madrid, Alex Eala was not some unstoppable force climbing the rankings. She was hovering. Around world number 44. One week she wins, the next week she loses. 5 wins, 5 losses in her last 10 matches. That is not dominance. That is uncertainty. And if you followed her closely, you could feel it in the rhythm of her season. One week she looks sharp, balanced, confident. The next week she fades, sometimes quickly, sometimes without ever really finding her footing. Just days before Madrid, she stepped onto the court in Stuttgart and exited early. No deep run, no breakthrough moment. Just another reminder of how difficult it is to make that leap from promising to reliable. And that is something people outside the sport do not always understand. Tennis is not just about talent. It is about repetition under pressure. About showing up the same way, even when everything around you changes. Different courts, different balls, different opponents, different expectations pressing on your shoulders. Eala had the tools. A left-handed game that opens angles naturally. Clean baseline mechanics that allow her to redirect pace. A junior career that suggested she belonged on bigger stages. But tools alone do not win matches at this level. Consistency does. And that is where the doubts started to creep in. Because when you compare her to someone like Pavlyuchenkova, the contrast is clear. On one side, a 20-year-old still searching for her identity. On the other, a veteran with over a decade of experience, millions in earnings, and a Grand Slam final already in her story. This is not supposed to be easy. Even the numbers before the match told you that. Eala had a slight edge. Barely over 50%. A coin flip. So the expectation was simple. This would be a test. A real one. Could she hold her level when rallies stretch out? Could she handle the weight of experience across the net? Could she stay calm when momentum starts to swing? Because this is where young players often break. Not because they are not talented, but because they are not ready yet. And that is why this win matters. Not just because she beat Pavlyuchenkova, but because of how she did it. Because if you step back and look beyond the scoreline, this was not just another win. It was a signal, a glimpse of who she might be becoming. And if you are watching and thinking, wait, maybe this is the moment everything clicks, you are not alone. But stay with me, because this is where things start to get uncomfortable. Because the deeper you look, the more complicated it becomes. At first glance, the score looks simple. 6-3, 6-3. Controlled, straightforward, clean. But once you look underneath, something does not quite add up. So start with the obvious question. Was this about Eala playing great, or Pavlyuchenkova playing poorly? Because coming into this match, Pavlyuchenkova was struggling. 1 win, 10 losses since her last deep run. That is not just a slump, that is a collapse. So now you have to ask something that feels uncomfortable. Did Eala dominate a strong opponent, or did she take advantage of a struggling one? And if it is the second, what does this win really mean? But here is where it gets interesting. Even if Pavlyuchenkova was struggling, the way Eala won still feels unusual. Look at the numbers. Nearly 58% of total points won. Half of her break points converted. More than 75% success on first serve points. Those are not lucky numbers. Those are control numbers. And control is something young players rarely have against veterans. So now the question shifts again. If Pavlyuchenkova was struggling, why could she not disrupt Eala? Why did the rallies stay structured? Why did the momentum never swing? Because usually, in matches like this, things get messy. A veteran slows the game down, changes rhythm, pulls the younger player into uncomfortable situations. But that never happened, which leads to another layer. Maybe this was not about Pavlyuchenkova at all. Maybe this was about what Eala was doing. Think about it. What if the match felt one-sided, not because one player collapsed, but because the other never allowed chaos to enter the match? Now it gets even more interesting. Because if that is true, you have to go back to Eala's recent losses. Matches where she looked rushed, out of rhythm, reactive instead of in control. So now you are looking at two different versions of the same player. One overwhelmed, one in command. Which one is real? And why do they exist at the same time? Because if you cannot answer that, then this performance feels less like a breakthrough and more like a mystery. And here is the part that should make you pause. What if the difference is not about skill? What if it is something deeper? Because if that is the case, this is not just inconsistency. It is a pattern. Now here is the twist. Alex Eala did not suddenly become better in Madrid. She became different, and that difference is everything. Because what most people saw was control, composure, a young player finally putting it together. But what they did not see was a shift in mindset. She stopped trying to win the match. And yes, that sounds strange, because every player wants to win. But that desire, when pushed too far, becomes a trap. Young players chase winners. They rush points. They try to force outcomes before the moment is ready. And when they do that against experienced opponents, they lose control. That is what happened to Eala earlier this season. Against Muchova, she rushed. Against Fernandez, she pressed. She tried to play above her level instead of within it. And the result was always the same. Errors, broken rhythm, matches slipping away before they could settle. But in Madrid, something shifted. Instead of trying to beat Pavlyuchenkova, she made Pavlyuchenkova beat herself. Look at how the match unfolded. Eala did not chase risky winners. She did not try to overpower. She extended rallies. She placed the ball carefully. She reset again and again, forcing the rally to continue until the right moment appeared. And here is where it becomes powerful. When you do that against a player already low on confidence, you apply pressure without taking risk. And pressure without risk is one of the most suffocating forces in tennis. That is how you end up with numbers like this. 64 points to 47. 4 breaks to 1. That is not brute force. That is control. That is suffocation. Now imagine what that feels like across the net. A player like Pavlyuchenkova, who relies on timing and rhythm, if you take away quick finishes, you force her into longer exchanges. Longer rallies mean more decisions. More decisions mean more chances for mistakes. And if confidence is already fragile, those mistakes come faster. So what looked like dominance was actually control at a deeper level. Eala did not out-hit her. She outmanaged her. And that changes how you see this entirely. Because now, it is not about talent. It is about decision-making. And here is the question that matters. If she can play like this, why has she not done it consistently? Was this intentional? Or did it happen because of the matchup? Because that answer defines everything that comes next. Now let us test it. Because saying she played smarter is one thing. The numbers tell the real story. Eala won 68 points. Pavlyuchenkova won 50. That is not close. That is control from start to finish. Break points. Eala 4 out of 8, Pavlyuchenkova 1 out of 6. In the moments that matter most, Eala stayed calm. Service games. Eala held 8 times. Pavlyuchenkova 5. She was not just attacking. She was protecting her rhythm. And that word keeps coming back. Rhythm. Because this match was not explosive. It was steady. Repetitive. Almost hypnotic. Rally after rally. Shot after shot. No panic. Even the smallest detail tells the story. One ace. Just one. She was not winning easy points. She was building them, constructing each rally like a sequence, step by step, until the opening appeared. And when you combine that with Pavlyuchenkova form, it becomes clear. A struggling player forced into long rallies with no shortcuts. Every point becomes work, and eventually, that work turns into errors. We have seen this pattern before. Players who do not overwhelm you. They outlast you, they stretch the match, remove your comfort, take away your rhythm, and slowly, the match slips away. That is exactly what happened here. And if you look at Eala's season overall, a 57% win rate. Not dominant, but steady. And when she wins cleanly, it often looks like this. Controlled, quiet, efficient, which means this is not random. This is repeatable. So now go back to the question, how did she make it look so easy? Because now the answer is clear. She removed chaos, and when chaos disappears, everything else is exposed. Confidence, timing, decision-making, all of it. And once those start to crack, the scoreboard follows. So now we can answer it fully. How did Alex Eala make this look easy? It was not power. It was not luck. And it was not a one-time fluke. It was control. When you put everything together, her ranking, her form, the numbers, the structure of the match, a pattern appears. She did not win by doing something extraordinary. She won by doing something repeatable. She removed chaos, and against a veteran already struggling. That makes everything predictable. Longer rallies, growing pressure, rising errors. That 6-3 scoreline, it looks simple, but it was built point by point, decision by decision. And here is why that matters. This kind of win travels. Power can disappear, timing can fade, but decision-making stays. And if Eala has realized she does not need to out-hit opponents, then everything changes, her ceiling changes, completely. Look at the tour. So many players rely on pace, first strike tennis, quick finishes, but on clay, especially in Madrid, that approach does not always hold.